Did you know that the first video game ever made was released in 1958? It was called Tennis for Two, and it is credited to physicist William Higginbottom. Throughout the years after Tennis for Two hit the scene, we can see the first recorded evidence of the video game remake, with games like Pong taking the same concept and modernizing it for the year it released in 1972. In the following decades of gaming, there were many games that would essentially be tennis simulators in some form or another, which technically would also make them modern remakes of the original video game, Tennis for Two. While back in the 50s through 70s, games were in their infancy, where games were more so concepts rather than fully realized franchises that we see today. So of course, it just makes much more sense that in an era where the technology was just beginning to take off, that you come across many repeated takes on older concepts. And yet, we aren't even one quarter through the year, at the time of recording, and we've already seen two high-profile remakes of classic video games and one heavily remastered remaster, all of which are some of the highest-rated game releases of the year. So why? Why are video game remakes on the rise with more and more releasing each year, even if in some cases they aren't necessarily needed? Why do so many people want more remakes? In this month's video essay, I'm going to get to the bottom of all of this and more. But before we get started though, folks, I just wanted to say, hey, thanks for checking out this video. This is officially the fourth video essay I've done here, and this topic is one I've been wanting to cover since I started on this whole journey. But obviously there was a recent high profile release that would help out with the SEO on this video, and it's just better timing overall. I have to be honest with all of you, this video might be a little late. As I am recording the video for this right now, I'm a bit behind schedule, and I just thought you should all know why. Lately I've been distracted by this little old video game. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. And oh man, that's a pretty good video game right there. I mean, I know it came out 6 years ago, and I got it 6 years ago, but it was just never able to grab my attention, but now it has, and that's been a real big problem for my productivity. I just thought you guys should know. I hope you can find it in your hearts to forgive me. Anyways, as always, I'd appreciate every little bit of support and feedback you've got from me, and I would very much appreciate you sharing this video to every single person you know, assuming, of course, you do end up liking what you see here, and if you do, you can prove it by hitting the like button and leaving a nice comment. Why not tell me what your dream video game remake is? That'd help with the algorithm, and that'd be pretty cool of you to do. But now, without further ado, let's see if we can find out why we keep getting more and more video game remakes. Nostalgia is something we've talked a lot about on this channel, and by a lot, I mean in one other video essay that covers that nostalgia you get from replaying your favorite video games. So because of that, I don't want to spend too much time rehashing what I've already said in that video, but feel free to check that one out after this one. Between you and me, I don't really know why that video performed so well, but it encouraged me to keep going, so here we are. When it comes to remakes, that sense of nostalgia you get from a replay of your favorite game can be just as powerful, if not more. Think back to your favorite video games you played when you were younger. Yes, that's the one. Ooh, that's a good choice. Very good choice, yeah. Now play that game today. I'll wait. Great. Chances are that game is a little rough around the edges by modern standards, whether it be graphically, mechanically, or in some cases, dialogue,
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light.
Through the lens of nostalgia, these games may be better than you remember them being. Of course, though, you'll still always love that game for what it was at the time and for what it means to you. There will be no taking that away from you. A video game remake gives these older, classic, and oftentimes fan-favorite games a new lease on life. Splash on a dazzling fresh coat of paint that brings the game up to modern graphical fidelity and a new pass-through on mechanics, and you've got yourself the game you loved playing the same way you see it in your memories of it. Like, do you remember when you thought graphics weren't going to get any better than the PlayStation 1? I don't. I'm not that old. It's just an example. Many people thought that the graphics of Metal Gear Solid were groundbreaking, and at the time, they were. But looking back, well, that's a different story. It's one thing to replay your favorite video games in its original release state, But experiencing all of your favorite moments with all of modern gaming sensibilities just makes it that much better. And even in some cases, that game you love may be dramatically expanded upon. With the proper care and respect, you could potentially end up with even more to love, further solidifying a game as your favorite, which is only a good thing for both players and the developers. But we'll get to that part later. It also makes that game easier to recommend to your friends. In the past, whenever you recommend your favorite 2-decade-old video game to your friend, they may just look at you like you're crazy to suggest they play a game that old in the year 2023. Oh my god, just now, as I'm doing VO, I realized that 2 decades ago is 2003. That's crazy to me. When I was typing up the script, I was thinking 2 decades ago, thinking like the 80s or 90s. 2 decades ago is 2003. I was alive then. Oh my god, I'm having an existential crisis in the middle of a VO recording. I gotta get back on track. Where were we? Yeah, your friend may look at you like you're crazy to suggest they play a game in the year 2023, but remakes can do a lot to capture new audiences, which brings us to our next point. No matter how much you tell your friends and family they need to play Resident Evil 4, they may not feel so inclined to, simply due to the age controls of it all. But now with the new modern remake of Resident Evil 4, it is a much easier sell. And that goes on way beyond just your circle of friends and extends all throughout the gaming verse. Resident Evil as a franchise has been finding a new audience of players who are all experiencing the multitude of modern remakes for the very first time. This is only a good thing, no matter what way you look at it. Unless you're one of those classic only gatekeeper type of losers. Yes, if that sounds like you, you're a loser. There's no way around it. But you can still turn things around, okay? When these remakes of games are able to find new audiences, then guess what? We get more from your favorite franchises. Obviously, the biggest and brightest star of these modern remakes come from Capcom's Resident Evil franchise, so naturally, they're going to come up a lot. Probably like 60% of this video will be talking about Resident Evil, just so that you're aware. Let's look back to Resident Evil's revival before we look at its remakes. Resident Evil 7, which was my first Resident Evil game by the way. Shout out to Xbox Game Pass for allowing me to play a game I thought I'd be too scared to play, so I didn't want to waste money on it, but then it turned out to be a really great video game full of awesome puzzles and fun thrills, which of course led me to becoming a full-fledged fan of the franchise. I think I just got way off track. In fact, I know I did. I'm looking at the script right now. This is actually a part of the script too. I should get back on topic. The launch sales numbers for Resident Evil 7 was reported at 2.5 million copies sold, followed up by Resident Evil 2 Remake's launch sales of 3 million. All fine and dandy, pretty impressive sales, and of course, Resident Evil 3 had that less than stellar remake, which I liked fine, but that came in at a reported 2 million sales, which is less of course. Then Resident Evil Village also launched with 3 million copies sold, tying with Resident Evil 2. All of which just to lead us to the point that Resident Evil 4 Remake smashed all of those sales by selling a reported number of 4 million copies already. The factors causing an extra million copies sold over the other franchises' releases? Yep, you guessed it, new fans have gathered over the years from latching onto the franchise with a remake, and Resident Evil 4, the original one, was widely acclaimed as one of the greatest video games of all time. When the original game came out, I was 5 years old. I mean, I eventually played the HD remaster leading into Resident Evil Village, but I was able to look past the age gameplay. But there are hundreds of thousands of other people my age, or people who just missed the boat on Resident Evil 4, who couldn't, and just figured that they'd never get the chance to experience one of the so-called greatest games of all time. Look beyond just Resident Evil. Dead Space, Final Fantasy VII, Demon's Souls, I could go on, but the point being is that all of these games are classics that have only over time become bigger and bigger deals, whether it's from people clamoring for one franchise's return or a developer's pedigree reaching insane heights leading people to want to check out their earlier titles. Remakes give new players the opportunity to experience some of the greatest games of all time. We find ourselves in the middle of one of the most, if not the most competitive time in the gaming industry. Everyone out there is just doing whatever they can to take the money right out of your wallet. And what's the best way to do that? What sets them apart from all the others who vie for your hard-earned money? Some of the publishers out there have the means to capitalize on tried and true quantities by bringing back familiar franchises people already love and use your nostalgia against you. But I mean, you love a cool remake, so it's not done in like a scummy way. Setting out to develop a remake is also a much easier path to take rather than creating a brand new entry in a franchise. Though it is possible that in some cases, a remake could potentially pave the way for the franchise to make a grand return with brand new titles if the player interest proves to be there and it's something that publishers want to capitalize on. It's honestly unfortunate how media is driven entirely by sales rather than new ideas. There's something to be said about the lack of new IPs from the biggest publishers in the industry and how creatively bankrupt they seem to be, but that's another conversation for another day. For now though, a lot of them rely on the sure sales that returning to familiar games in the form of remakes give them, which is a symbiotic relationship. We the players get higher quality remakes of our favorite games and the studios and publishers get money. It just works. There's something that's been bugging me this whole time I've been working on this script, and now it feels like a good point to plug it in. That Knights of the Old Republic remake is stuck in a state of development hell, and that sucks. I just need to say that somewhere in this video. With all this talk about remakes, how could I not? That's probably the remake I want the most out of games that are being remade in this day and age. Knights of the Old Republic could absolutely benefit a lot from a high quality remake, considering it has one of the greatest stories in all of Star Wars, but well, it's super aged and not everyone will be willing to look past that, and I just want it to look as good as it should. But yeah, that's the bulk of it. Between you and me, I think that the next game that should get a remake is the original Devil May Cry. It just makes too much sense to me. I recently played through that first game because I wanted to play Devil May Cry 5, but I wanted to get the complete story, so I went back to the beginning. I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way. The people who played Devil May Cry 5 and would now like to go back to play the older games are in that same boat, but those older games just don't play nearly as well as 5 does. Plus, this is Capcom we're talking about, the publisher who's been pumping out those Resident Evil remakes to wide acclaim and successful sales. Plus, Devil May Cry gameplay is already in the RE engine with Devil May Cry 5. So all that needs to be done now, hypothetically, is remaking the original game's levels and assets, since the gameplay is already there and ready to go. And of course, you'd need some new dialogue pass-throughs because what the hell was this?
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
It'd be kind of poetic in a way too, since Devil May Cry spawned from the bones of an early version of Resident Evil 4, and since the Resident Evil games get remakes, so too should Devil May Cry. Or at least that's what I think. That's the logical next remake, but if I could have a remake of any game I wanted, then I'd probably say Horizon Zero Dawn. Personally, I like that game more than Forbidden West, and oh, my bad. There's already been a reported remake of that game in the works. Obviously that was a joke, but in actuality, if I could get a remake of any game, I'd of course throw out some Metal Gear Solids, but at the end of the day, I would do just about anything for a remake of one of my favorite games of all time, Fallout New Vegas. But what about you? Tell me in the comments below, what is that one video game remake you'd do just about anything to have? And if you made it this far, why not tell me if you prefer a top hat or a fedora, and why? All of those comments go toward boosting the algorithm and getting this video out to more like-minded players like all of us here. And you know what else helps with the algorithm? Subscribing and leaving a like on the video before you head out about on your day. I'd appreciate all of that so very much. I know I said I wouldn't tease out the next video essay because who knows, maybe I could change my mind. But given the next couple of games releasing soon, I feel confident that the next video essay has already been set in stone. So, drumroll please. Oh wow, what a tease. What could it possibly mean? Only one way to find out, and that's by sticking around right here. Until then, stay safe and play some video games.